Hey, I'm Carl Lukings with Horizon Solutions, and it is January 2021. We are back into lockdown number 2 in Ontario for the COVID-19 pandemic. And, back in April of 2020, we did a video where we were talking to some church leadership about what their plans were and how they were going to move their church online, or how they were moving their churches online. And that video went well. A number of people were quite interested in that. And, it was good to be able to hear what kind of different perspectives different churches were taking and how they were doing things differently. Well, 8 months have passed. We're back into lockdown number 2 now here in Ontario. So we want to talk to them again. We want to talk to some church leadership, see what have they learned, what are they doing the same, what are they doing differently. I think it's going to be an interesting one. Let's get started. All right, so I'm here with Adam Woodman from New Hope in London. Actually, I guess technically New Hope in Lambeth, right? Adam, you were with us back in April of 2020 when we were joined with the other guys, and we were talking a little bit about what your plans were and how you were kicking off the first couple of weeks of church online. We are now in January of 2021. A few things have changed. We're back into lockdown again, and we're just checking in with a few of you guys to see kind of, just a quick recap on what it was that you were doing then. Maybe talk a little bit about what it is you're doing now and maybe some things that you learned. So can you just remind us, what were you doing, if you can remember way back when, that feels like years ago? What were you guys doing back in April?
Yeah, we were completely pre-recording everything back in April. Whether that was, musicians in their living rooms and merging footage, that kind of thing, or that became the band would meet, midweek and record something, and we would edit it for the weekend. We would record sermons midweek, that kind of thing. So everything was pre-recorded. Right. Everything was, high degree of control over that. I loved that.
Yep.
That seemed
your work looked really good. Like, you guys were trying to shoot to hit a certain level of excellence every single time you're producing something. You're uploading it to Vimeo, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it looked really good, but that had to have been a ton of work.
Yeah. So I think in the end, we were trying to find the right people. We actually hired somebody part-time, and I lost my mind. So a combination of a few things, it was just not sustainable.
Right.
At the end. I'm all for pre-recording. I'm all for excellence, but there comes a point, hey, where too much is too much, and unless you're going to commit the people power to do that in a sustainable way. And at the same time, you're always looking at the news and you're hearing, okay, change is coming here or it's coming there. And so you think, well, why make it sustainable if it's not going to last? If we're going to pivot anyway in a couple of weeks, why go to lengths now to do that? So that was the conversation we had, and it led us to where we're at today.
Okay, so what are you doing now? How are you guys doing things on a Sunday by Sunday basis, or even actually, I guess back then when we were talking, you were doing things daily or every other day, right?
Yeah, that's right. We were shooting sort of 3-minute devotionals on video. Somebody from the staff, just shoot it on their iPhone at home, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there was an element of editing and whatever, but it was pretty much off the cuff kind of stuff. We still have continued to do that. We just think it's a good touch point with the people in the congregation. It's good to see a familiar face, sort of thing.
Yeah.
As far as Sundays go, when we were back in person, which I think for us was mid-July,
okay,
we continued to pre-record for probably a month or so.
Okay.
And we really kicked off streaming, I think it was September. Sometime in September, maybe early October, we went to a full stream. We just jumped in. We took a big jump into the deep end and hoped for the best. and it was a big learning experience for us. We messed up a whole ton of stuff, and we're really still trying to. I mean, the process of learning that and doing it to the level where you're happy with it is a bit of a process. So,
yeah, for sure.
That's where we're at today.
And so, how many cameras are you using right now?
Right now, we're using 3 cameras.
Okay. And now, one of the things that I think is unique about your church is that anybody who's been to New Hope knows that you've got that large, wide format video projection system. So it's a couple of Christie projectors projecting on a 20-foot wide screen, I guess it is, something like that. So that's not necessarily the kind of thing that you can just take that and drop that into a stream without some level of manipulation or doing something with it. So how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, so we're essentially using ProPresenter in-house, and we have connected that to the streaming computer. It's just going into OBS, and we're using. I mean, if we're playing a full video, it just overtakes it, and if we're doing lyrics, it's a lower third sort of thing.
Right.
But as far as the ratio, I think the ratio of our screen is 25:9.
Right.
That's sort of what we're looking at.
Okay.
That got pushed to the bottom of the pile as far as how are we going to make that look the best kind of thing. And so when people were in the room, like they were, say, a month ago, we just went with black bars on top and bottom. And so it just looked wider on their screen if you're watching on your iPhone. Today, there's nobody in the room, so we've kind of deferred to the opposite, where we get a less than stellar view in the room, but the people at home get the full 16:9 that you would expect to see. So
which makes sense. I mean, if there's only 10 people in the room anyway, and they're not really the audience, then okay.
And ProPresenter even has a feature where you can change those things without, re-editing your footage kind of thing, or resizing your footage. They can do an automatic thing. It's just that sometimes for us, there may be some incidental cropping, that you just don't realize until it actually happens. And so that's why it's kind of a thing for us. But.
Right. That makes sense. So what do you think has been the biggest thing that you've learned that, you kind of got that look like you're thinking about it. I do know that, as you've already said, when we talked before, you were, I know you like excellence. You like trying to shoot for a certain level of quality, and you always do that. And I do know that you're pretty sure that this is what you're going to continue to do, to pre-shoot things. So that's a big change for you guys. So what else do you think that you've learned?
What did we learn? Well, so in shooting for excellence, I said, okay, we're going to do a dry run week 1. We're still going to do everything we've done before, but we'll go through the steps as if we were going to be doing this. Nobody will see it, etc. Yeah. That happened to be the week that I got sick.
Oh, great.
So
not with COVID. You got sick with a cold, right?
Just a cold.
Okay,
right?
Great.
Out of caution, you're not going to walk into a room with people, right? So that was the case for us in that. And so we didn't get to do that dry run week because we had committed to weeks ahead, with the Sunday team, just, not pre-recording and et cetera.
Sure.
So we didn't get to do that, which really has been one of the biggest things that I've been challenged with and have been learning through this is the people factor.
Right.
It's so valuable having the right people in the right places, doing the right things, until they find out, oops, I have to quarantine and I can't be there.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And if that doesn't happen probably every week, and so, on the people level, it's been a challenge to just say, let's just stop complaining about it. You know what I mean? Because you show up every Sunday and you're short in some way, whether it's a guitarist or a sound person that called in and said, I'm sorry. Yeah. And well intentioned, great people, all the rest. Yeah. And for whatever reason, So that has been that has probably been our most significant challenge. As far as on the tech side, boy, it's just always trying to take the next step of like, well, what didn't work this week? Besides the fact that, I mean, our sound guy wasn't able to come, and so we put in this guy that we thought would work, and the audio sounded, I shouldn't say terrible, in case they watch.
Everybody's learning, right?
It's not where you want it. It takes learning, and so for somebody to run audio for this is different than running audio in the room.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're running it simultaneously. It's not, our online feed isn't, just a copy of, it's not just another output from our room sort of thing. And so that takes some learning, and it takes some time to get used to that sort of thing. So, but it's just week after week saying, okay, what could we have done better this week? Let's not beat ourselves up sort of thing. And so even just this last week, I'm trying to watch it with a critical eye. I'm trying to watch it with a forgiving eye in some ways as well. But it just felt like when people were in the room, when we were at 30% capacity, it felt pretty good. Like you just got the sense, we got two cameras at the back and we've got one sort of at the front. You can get a sense of the room. You can get a sense of who's there, and just the feel of the room. And it feels different than when it's an empty room and those same cameras are there. And so this last week, and I mean, we're zooming in. We're not showing like a giant empty room kind of thing. But I just thought, boy, we got to get those cameras closer, like whatever we can do. And so we have one wireless unit, but I just wanted, and so I got this, just a 35-foot HDMI, and shoved the camera as far as we could, just to get a better sense of connection and engagement, like if somebody's sharing with you that they're not way back here sort of thing. But it's just doing those little things for us week after week and trying to be honest with where we're at. And honestly, I'm not happy yet. And I get the feeling it's going to take a little while. It takes time.
Yeah, it does.
Trying to be patient.
You learn patience and grace, I guess.
Yeah. There's only one way to learn patience, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, okay, I'm going to ask you two technical questions before I let you go. The first one is, are you still streaming to Vimeo?
Yes. So we're using OBS, streaming to Vimeo, and Vimeo shoots it over to Facebook.
Okay, great.
That's been rolling. I've been investigating, more of a shell, if you will, that you would put on your website. People go to the website, that kind of thing. Honestly, just haven't had the time to make the shift over. The one I was looking at was through Life Church. It's a free thing. It seems pretty robust in what they're offering. So we'll probably go to that in the next season. But I guess when I'm learning to juggle, I want to learn how to juggle with 2 or 3 balls before I, you know what I mean? Throw another ball.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can tell you we've had a lot of good success with StreamMonkey, and they're really they've been really great to work with, and they can restream things to wherever you want them to go. But there is a cost associated with that. I think we're going to talk to Al Mills next at Forest City Community Church, and I know they're using StreamMonkey. It seems to be working out pretty well for them. Adam, just one other quick question. On the technical side, are you using? You said you're going from one computer to another with ProPresenter. I think that's what you said. Are you using NDI to do that, or how are you going from the one to the other?
Yeah, everything gets from our auditorium to our streaming setup. It's not in the same room. It's probably, I don't know, like the line would have to be somewhere around 50 feet plus kind of thing. So we essentially are running HDMI. So we've got those HDMI extenders.
Oh, okay. So you're doing HDMI from the booth up, and then you're using a capture card into the computer.
Yeah, that's right.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
So I would run HDMI.
Right. Okay. All right, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Adam. It's interesting to see how New Hope in Lambeth is continuing to evolve throughout the pandemic, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Good to see you, Kyle.
Thank you. Bye now. All right, we are now here with Al Mills. Al is with Forest City Community Church and has been with Forest City for quite a while now. Al takes care of a lot of the tech side of things at the church and provides leadership to that. So, Al, back in April, we were talking, and you guys were kind of in the middle of rebuilding some of your media ministry when the pandemic hit, right?
Yeah, we had a project that was on the go for a while. It had taken us a while to get going because it was a pretty big project.
Yeah.
So right before the pandemic hit, we really had kind of stuff set up for streaming, but we weren't ready to stream yet.
Right.
Then it happened so suddenly. We picked up some stuff and got it going. And so we were running stuff in a booth upstairs, but there really wasn't enough room and that kind of stuff. So we got a volunteer crew together, got everything moved down the basement. It took a few months. We were fortunate. One of our volunteers had about 35 years in the tech television industry, and he really knows his stuff.
Yeah, not every church has somebody who's got that sort of experience.
No, we've been lucky, and so that was a huge help for us. And so that's what we were doing at the time, and we now have the room established downstairs. It's been running for about say 6 months.
Okay.
Still learning some things from that, though. Still tweaking.
So you had a video switcher with a number of inputs, that kind of thing, that was all upstairs in that media booth up in the balcony. And you had how many camera inputs? Is it 4 camera inputs? Is that right?
No, it's about 6 camera inputs plus you can drop in 3 HDMI's, so it gives you some opportunity for DVD or computer, whatever.
Right. Okay, got it. And that's a Ross video switcher. And then now you've taken all of that, extended all those lines, mostly SDI, right?
Yep, all SDI.
Okay, extended all those lines and moved it down into the basement, which happens to be underneath the platform, underneath the stage in your church. Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a pretty big room.
It is. It's a big room, and I figured out that we ran about 10,000 feet of cable together when we did it. But we did run some redundancy stuff there too. So we want to make sure that if we make changes or want to add something, that we don't have to start pulling cable again. So we did that. Though I will tell you, one of the key elements, because we're a fairly large building, and there's a lot of people involved in when we do a service, and there's kind of a design behind our services that necessitates some extra work on our part. So one of the key things was communication, and I know that we got some communication stuff from you, comms from I think we got Pro Intercom from you guys. Mm-hmm. And if you were to ask me what the biggest thing is that we kind of learned and figured out from that, it was the beauty of communicating with everybody on comm lines. Right. We have a person because our stream audio mixer is in the basement, and he works from headphones. It's a totally independent control. Upstairs, they're mixing for the room, plus doing FOH plus monitors. But what we needed was a communication system. So we have a guy who wears a wireless, and he'll make sure that sound checks are completed in the basement, that the video director is happy with some of the shots and the movements. So we have 2 channels. The video director talks to his or her camera operators all the time. And on the other channel, we have a production assistant who organizes everybody. Right. And they talk to everybody else. And I can't tell you what a difference it made for us when we realized, hey, everybody's talking. And I think that even works in a smaller context too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it doesn't necessarily have to be headsets. Sometimes, actually, to be honest, we know some professional theaters that they've got so many different ways of communicating. One of them is text. They're always in communication with each other with different things. You touched on the fact that you have somebody mixing audio for the stream downstairs. So we have some churches that are doing that. Absolutely. We've got a number of churches that are doing it all in one mixer. And, there's no perfect answer to how to get audio for a stream. And everybody will say, well, I shouldn't say everybody. Many people will say, yeah, the perfect answer is that you take a digital console and you split all of the inputs into a different digital console and you have that person mix it. Where that's not a perfect answer is if you don't have the money or the volunteers to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But you guys have been fortunate to be able to do that. So you have your iLive upstairs, your digital audio console, Allen Heath board that you've had for a number of years. So can you explain how have you connected from that console down to the other console?
Sure. So the iLive, which is a little bit older now, but it runs a digital stage box called the Mix Rack.
Yep.
And we installed a Dante card in the Mix Rack.
Right.
And the new mixer we bought is an SQ6, which is another Allen Heath product.
Sure.
And we put a Dante card in that. So I actually asked Dan Nagel, one of your guys, he helped me set up the communications between the two consoles and the mix rack. And if you're going to do that, I for sure would ask Dan or one of the guys how to do that, because it can be a little bit complicated and a little fussy.
Right.
But once we got it working, so we're just talking through network stuff. So there's really no audio that's passing around.
Right.
Just a bunch of network control. It's on its own closed network. Nobody else can interfere with it. Nobody else can see it. And once we got it going, it's been perfect ever since.
Nice.
Some of the issues that, like you mentioned, you have volunteer issues, like are there enough people? I mean, in all honesty, the SQ6 wasn't a very expensive mixer, but I love it because I think it's fantastic. It took the guys a little bit of time to get used to it, but they were used to the iLive, which is a different, it's a different family of mixer.
Yeah.
So it spread our volunteers a little bit thin, but some of them have gotten really good at doing the stream. And the frustration is they're mixing in headphones.
Right.
Or they're trying to mix by the reference monitors that we have in the control room.
Right.
And then people are playing these back on maybe earbuds, or maybe they're playing them back on a television with a 4-inch speaker, or maybe they have a surround sound system. So landing in a place where we think it sounds good has been really hard from both the guys' perspective and from what we hear as products that come back.
Sure.
We just talked about it the other day. We have a meeting every week. We kind of evaluate how well we did. And a couple of guys had listened to stuff on headphones and loved it. And that really made them much happier about the mixes, because they realized, we're sending out a good product, but we can't be responsible for what everybody has at home.
Yeah, sure. No, that's fair. I remember one of the first times that I was in a recording studio, and I was there just kind of a fly on the wall, and they finished. They were just working on finalizing a mastering session. And so then they took what they had, threw it onto a CD, and then went for a drive around the block a couple of times listening to the track, right? Just to make sure that it sounded okay in their Honda Civic, as opposed to sounding okay on the big Tannoy speakers that they had in their space, right? This is going back a couple of years. But it's more difficult to do that when you're streaming something live, and like you say, you're never really sure. It's interesting, the entire live stream world has changed so much with this, right? Like there was a time when everybody just thought, well, of course people are going to watch it on their TV, but between computer speakers and earbuds and phone speakers and who knows what, right?
Yeah, and it's really kind of funny because there's such a variety of instruments out there to listen to. Right. And, you always get those kind of moments where people are panicked about the stream. So I've had people call me on a Sunday morning that are knowing or evaluate the stream. And they're going, there's no sound. And I'm going, well, I think there is. And then to get a text back from them a minute later, oh, sorry, I have my headphones plugged in and I didn't realize it. So trying to help people understand and figure out their own technical things, and also not knowing what equipment they have at home. Right. We just do the best we can and trust that it's going out well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you've moved all your equipment, you've expanded your team, you're working on trying to be able to put out a good product every week. What's kind of what do you think is the biggest thing that you guys have learned in the last 8 months about having an online presence, where you were recording and you were kind of shipping it off to the East Campus, that kind of thing? So you had something that you were already producing a product, but now you're actually streaming. You're into it 8 months deep. What do you think you've learned? What are you producing that's maybe a little bit different?
Well, I mean, there's a lot in that question, but we've been trying to learn and do as much as we can. And our guys, our people, the leadership, everybody, we're always on a learning track.
Yeah.
So we try to figure out every week, what could we have done better, or how do we make this mistake, that kind of stuff. I think one of the biggest things from more of a strategic and production standpoint is how do you help an online community become part of what's going on in that room.
Right.
Even when there was a small opening up, we had 100 or 150 people in the room. And the question most times for people that are on stage, not singers and vocalists, but more for people that are talking heads, do they look at the camera or do they not?
Yeah, right.
And if you've got something specifically designed for an online community, you're going to look at the camera.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to bring the online community into your room, you're going to look at the room plus probably the camera a little bit. But and that's a challenge because you're kind of going, what we do now on a weekly basis, is that an online community or is it our on-campus attenders who are just, right now they can't come because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And we've even asked questions of churches that are experts at this, like Craig Rochelle at lifechurch.tv.
Yep.
And, we're trying to learn from those guys. But in the end, I still think you wind up going, what's working best in our context?
Yeah.
Because people at our church might respond differently than people at other churches. And that's...
it's interesting. We get a lot of calls from churches asking about, camera locations and how many cameras and lighting and all these different things. And one of the first things that we often ask is, what's the intention for this stream? Is the intention that you're producing a television show, right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but are you producing something that's for television where I'm looking directly into the camera as opposed to, like you say, looking to these folks and looking to these folks, that kind of thing? And is the lighting all specific for television, or is the lighting something that's, we're capturing what's happening in the space, and therefore, the lighting is what it is, and we need to work on that. And then trying to find that balance, especially on a budget and with volunteer labor, again, right? Always comes back to those things, can be difficult. And so it's, managing that. And I'm not, I'll be honest, I'm not sure that any of our clients can say, we're 100% sure that all the time this is exactly the way we want it. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily needs to be the case, right? When you're trying to be so many different things for so many different people.
You really are. Now, my hope and intention is that, actually our plan is that we will continue with online even after everything loosens up again, because we actually are seeing people connecting with our church from around the world. Some of them are connections, some of them aren't, but we're happy with that. So we want to make sure that we at least have some sort of an offering that is good for people that are outside our context or even within our context but can't get to church.
Sure.
But like you say, I mean, you can't always know that everything, that everything is the way you want it to be. We've recently reviewed our lighting grid and we made some changes on that. Part of what we found was people that were at the front of the stage looked like they were pretty well lit.
Right.
People that were mid-stage, they sometimes look like they were in a different time zone because they were so dark. So we've worked through that, but we're still trying to figure out, can we light now? Right now, of course, we're back to totally stream. But when we had at Christmas time, we had a limited number of people in the room plus the stream. And what we did the first 2 times we did the service, we recorded it for the stream, but we left the lighting the way it was for the rest because we thought we had captured it actually quite well for the room. Right. But we learn that and sometimes it depends. We have volunteer video directors, so some of them won't say, they don't feel as emboldened to go, hey, I don't like the lights. So we still wind up with a variety of stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. We're all learning, right? Everybody's learning.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Al. I appreciate your time.
Happy to help.
And it's great to hear that you guys continue to progress and continue to try to push yourselves and push each other there. That's cool.
Well, I want to say this too. I mean, you and I have been friends for a long time. I think we're probably closing in on 20 years soon. But we've appreciated Horizon and the staff at Horizon. Technical expertise, as well as, I mean, the products. I know that we're getting good products, but I've never had any kind of experience with a Horizon staff member that I haven't gone, hey, this is pretty cool. So we're appreciative of that too.
All right, that's great. All right, we are now with Al Brouwer, Pastor Al Brouwer from St. Paul's Presbyterian in Ingersoll, Ontario. And so, Al, when we were talking to you back in April, we were talking about the fact that you guys were you're posting all of your services, or not posting your services, but you were really hosting meetings on WebEx for services every week, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, that's.
So do you want to just kind of give us a little bit of the background on I know we talked about this in the last video, but maybe give a quick background on why it was that you had chosen to go that way, and then we'll talk a little bit about kind of where the church has gone now.
Yeah, at the time we knew that a significant portion of our congregation were in the older category, so they struggled with technology a lot. So we wanted to have some kind of service that could be available to them where if they didn't have good high quality internet or a computer at home, that they could still phone in.
Right.
So WebEx became one of the options, just like Zoom would have been for many congregations. At the time, WebEx was offering more for their free account.
Sure. Okay.
So we could do the whole service. So it became that. So that's kind of pretty much the philosophy behind it, wanting to have as many people involved in the service as possible, knowing that there's so many different levels of comfort with technology.
Yeah. And you were getting a pretty good number of people joining those services too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So kind of things evolved a little bit. You guys moved out of your living room, back into the church. So where are things at now? How are you doing things?
So as we moved into the church, we kind of knew in November or so, we were looking to actually open up the church.
Right.
And so when we were looking to open up the church, we knew that we couldn't have our sound stuff all right in the aisle like it was when we were closed. So we knew we were going to have to do something different, and we wanted to be able to. Our sound booth is up in our kind of our balcony area,
Yep.
And so we wanted to be able to run everything through the soundboard into the computer to just have it's easier for my son or the other people helping out to be able to control it in one place versus having a table kind of on the floor with a couple monitors, right, and a little mini mixing board that, was okay, but if you were going to try to do anything more, it became a little hard with how many people you could have involved.
Sure.
And so with the soundboard, we have a big soundboard with a lot of channels. We were able to then, as many as we were able to be involved could be involved in the service as long as we could social distance and separate people.
Right. Okay. So one of the big steps was to be able to move back in the sanctuary, get the audio kind of back up to where it would have been on a regular Sunday morning, get the piano integrated and all that sort of thing too, right?
And then have both the live for people in the church and live for online at the same time. Where before we were just doing live online, right? So it didn't matter then also the sound quality in the sanctuary itself, because all the mics, everything were going through the into the computer, right?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because so far we talked to Adam Woodman at New Hope and Al Mills at Forest City, and both of those are pretty significant size churches with fairly significant tech backgrounds there. Adams, what they're doing for mixing their audio is a little different than what Forest City is doing. Forest City's Al just spoke about the fact that they've got a completely separate mixer that's just mixing for the stream. And I think that what you bring up there is a good point, that a lot of our clients are exactly in the same spot as St. Paul's, where you've got one person who, you know, can maybe do a half decent job for mixing the audio in the sanctuary, in the room for the people, but then to throw in the fact that now you also have to have a mix that's going out online, that can be pretty intimidating for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you know, we were just talking this over with both Al and with Adam about the fact that, you know, volunteers is such a big deal, and there's lots of churches all over the place that don't have 10, 20 people available for their tech team on a weekly basis. You know, a lot of them are lucky if they've got one, you know, who's awake, yeah. Right? And so it's a big deal to be able to walk through that. So it can definitely be a struggle for a lot of churches. Oh,
yes, I would definitely think that was. So then when we opened up, then we knew we had to kind of, since we were using the soundboard in the back and everything, we wanted then to be able to kind of help our volunteers out too as well, instead of trying to run a WebEx meeting with live, you know, in the sanctuary to the actual service with the people that come, and then going through, you know, to that. We wanted to simplify it and talking to our sound people, I guess in this case, mostly my teenage son who's 17.
Sure.
You know, he's like, it's much simpler. It would be much simpler for me if I could run through either YouTube or Facebook, you know, and live stream.
Right.
Right. It was much simpler. And so to make it simpler, since we were open at the time, we could allow people that didn't have internet could then come to the service, because the sanctuary was socially distanced. It was, you know, we tried to present, we had plexiglass around the pulpit,
yep.
You know, all those kinds of safety measures in place, so that people that didn't have the internet, they could come to the church if they felt safe enough to come, and also still have a high quality live stream,
right.
For everybody at home.
Right. Okay. And then around the same time, I believe you went to the PTZ camera as well, right? To remote camera, as opposed to the web camera that the webcam, I guess, that you'd been using in the past.
Yeah, and we also never really realized too that WebEx, I think the highest was 720 or so. I don't even know if we ever even achieved that with our video quality. So as soon as we went to the PTZ to a high definition, it was like, for a lot of people, they were just like, wow, it's so much clearer and nicer. We had to, you know, obviously we had done that in April. We hadn't done that yet. That's why we started out in my living room, but upgrade the internet, right, too, as well in the sanctuary.
Right.
And we had done that now, so it's actually a high quality, high speed, which helps too.
I think that internet service providers all over the world have been upgrading people's internets over the last number of months. It seems like almost everybody we've talked to, they're upgrading somehow, and running Cat5 lines from the church office up to the sound booth or where have you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're now to the point where you're streaming on YouTube. You've got better quality camera, and you've got better audio. What do you think that, you know, that's a pretty big step. You've taken a lot of big steps there. What do you think is kind of the biggest thing that you've learned over the last 8 months of kind of having church online and you know, holding a ministry that's kind of, I don't know, dealing with the tech side of that anyway, of having people in different spots all the time?
Yeah, it's definitely realized that how important the tech side is. You know, when you're trying to get your message out and you want to do it out the best way possible, you can't take advantage of thinking that you can just put anybody just behind the soundboard. You know, they have to feel comfortable with it, and they have to feel valued.
Right.
In doing that. I had one service, my son said to me, well, I think it was Christmas Eve, because we had done this big kind of pre-production. We recorded it and everything. And so I didn't really have to necessarily give a big Christmas message myself. And he literally said to me, Dad, in frustration at one point, Dad, my job's much harder than you are today.
Yeah, no, you know what? I think you're right. We have for years here at Horizon, we've talked about the fact that, you know, whoever the person is that's dealing with tech, whether it's a sound person, lighting, video, so many different aspects, that they need to recognize the fact that their position is just as important as the people who are standing on stage, in that, you know, they may not be singing or they may not be playing a guitar, but the aspect of ministry that they're taking part in is pretty important, right? And in some ways, now that we're streaming online, or there's so many multimedia presentations like what you're talking about, where there's the more integration of pre-recorded and live performance and that sort of thing, and it seems like so many of our clients are doing, I mean, lots of them have done similar things in the past, but not to the extent that they're pushing themselves today. The sound people, the video people, media in general are really needing to step up. I hope that they're still able to continue to sustain that, because some of them have been working at 110% for 8-9 months now. So
yeah, it's a serious question for us. We want to simplify our process enough so that we can start training other people besides my 17-year-old son, right? Like, because you got to still, even though you're running, we still run our worship slide program, Easy Worship too, and then you got OBS, which is running through up to YouTube.
Yep.
So you got to have some kind of basic knowledge with that, and then there's that added extra stress too of feeling like you're being watched by anybody, right? Like,
sure.
You know,
sure.
You don't know, you can't see. Normally, when you weren't broadcasting, you could see who you were speaking to.
Sure.
And now suddenly you don't necessarily know who you're speaking to.
Right.
You know, so suddenly your audience is expanded, and so it puts that extra, I think, pressure on, you know, a sound person too. When they make mistakes now, it's amplified even, right? Like,
yeah, and that's something that Adam touched on as well, as far as, you know, this idea that you're always trying to achieve the best. You're always trying to put forward a good product and represent the church well and your message well. But there's always that, you know, what if this goes wrong, or what if this happens, or what if the internet drops out partway through, or whatever, right? So
yeah.
Yes, it's definitely not like doing church when everybody's in the sanctuary together. That's for sure. Well, that's really great. Thanks for taking the time, Al. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that we will be talking again soon.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you. All right, so we are now here with Andrew Oldham from Redemption Bible Church here in London. Redemption Bible Church, right?
Chapel. But yeah,
Chapel. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. And so, Andrew, you guys have been expanding a lot over the last couple of years in technology, doing a number of things since you moved into your permanent building space a couple of years ago.
Yep.
So, can you tell us a little bit about where you were at with streaming and recording and that sort of thing, looking back into the spring, like March, April of 2020?
So when this kind of all hit in March, we were recording sermons and also doing live video for our sermons in our services.
Okay.
With a couple of stationary cameras and just capturing it through our gear that way. That was it though. No streaming, no. We'd post the sermons online, but not full services.
Right.
And that's pretty much where we were. So.
Right. Okay.
So kind of a little bit into the world, but not very much.
So how are you doing that at that point? You had multiple cameras, or you were doing just one camera? How are you doing at that?
So we had 3 stationary cameras that Norm will probably kill me for saying this, but he doesn't move a whole lot when he preaches. So
okay.
So we didn't really need operators and stuff like that. We could kind of just point and shoot, and yeah, it was pretty fairly easy. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then did you edit that each week then, or did you kind of switch between cameras and just take a final recording and then just post that, or how did that work?
So we just we'd switch on the fly basically. Yep. So we had a switcher, and just what we captured is what went online. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay. Great.
Just one camera at a time is all that was being captured. So yeah.
And so then really that was just kind of one volunteer that was operating things and had to man that through a service, that sort of thing.
For the most part, yeah. We'd have to call on people when we had a guest preacher that would move around a little more.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, it was pretty much one volunteer. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Okay, cool. So then pandemic hit, and how did that start to affect you guys?
So, I mean, we, like everybody, we scrambled. We wanted to get more than just the sermon online. So I think like a lot of churches, initially what people wanted was just content, some sort of connection. So we, first couple of weeks was honestly just same cameras, same setup, just recording our worship pastor, Steve, doing a set just by himself, a mic, a guitar.
Yep.
Pre-recording the sermon, and then we have a couple other guys on staff. Dan, our video editor, would kind of just put it together, and we'd post that online as kind of like a pre-recorded thing.
Right.
Simulated live is kind of the words that we use.
Yeah.
To simulate that we were actually there, even though we're not there at that time. So. Sure.
And you posted that to which platform?
So that was just posted to, we have an app through Subsplash and then our website. So that was just posted to those. And then we've been using this Church Online platform, which is a free resource that our elders wanted to use because it has a chat feature.
Yeah, right.
that they thought was important, so people could connect on Sunday morning as they're watching the video. Yeah.
I think you bring up a good point, because so many of the churches that we've talked to, they are always looking for a way of, how do we keep that interaction with people? How do we make sure that this isn't just a one-way communication thing every week or whatever? Yep. So yeah, we were talking to Al Brouwer, and he was saying, one of the things that was important for them in the beginning was using WebEx so that people could connect back and forth, but also so some people could hear over telephone. And then, these different services, some of them have that option, some of them don't. So that was back in the spring, and kind of as the pandemic hit. Where are you at now? What's changed about maybe the equipment side of things, but maybe has anything changed about your philosophy on how you're presenting your church out to the world now?
So in June, when we were allowed to go back to in person, we went back right away, and. Right. So kind of that March to June window was working on getting our live stream ready to go,
right.
Because that was a request by the elders that as soon as we go back to in-person services, we need to be able to have the ability to live stream.
Got it.
So on a gear side, there was some things we needed to move around. We've replaced kind of all our cameras with PTZ cameras and controllers and stuff. So that's because now we're capturing worship as well. So being able to get multiple different shots. Reason we went that route was it was volunteer driven as well, where essentially one person can sit there and capture an entire service on a Sunday with the 4 cameras that we have and the controller and the multiple presets that we put in place.
Right.
And then obviously audio as well. We wanted to make sure that pre-June, our audio was just like a front of house feed.
Right.
Right. So we wanted to make sure we could actually mix for our live stream. We felt that was going to be important as far as what people were experiencing at home. And then as far as philosophy, it was all driven by that, where like we definitely, once we were in person, we definitely wanted people to see into the room and experience what was going on at that moment, not pre-recorded.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
And then long term, it was also from gear, philosophy, all that stuff. It was also, we knew as soon as we started, this wasn't a pandemic thing. This is forever now. Like, live stream will be part of our ministry for as long as we go at this point. So
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, we're hearing that
Yeah.
from some of the largest churches that we work with to some of the smallest churches, that they're all
Yeah.
saying, you know, this is part of who we are now. This is what we do. We need to always be considering. We need to consider this into our volunteers. We need to be considering this into how we schedule a Sunday, how we even lay things out on Sunday, and who's on the platform, and who's going to be doing this, that kind of thing. How do we have a camera shot for that? Is that area lit properly? All of these different things, and then budget as well. Do we have enough money to be able to do what we need to do? So on the volunteer side of things, you went from one person who was kind of switching and making sure that you had what you needed to upload it back in the spring. How many volunteers are involved now? Or staff, I suppose, as well?
So on a Sunday when we're in the building, we used to run front of house audio guys and then monitor audio guys, and we'd have a guy doing the worship team monitors. We've just found it easier at this point to go to iPads for the worship team, and basically all the guys that used to do monitors are now our live stream guys.
Right.
So same type of schedule for them. They're just in a different room now doing a different thing.
Yep.
Obviously a little more pressure on them than there would have been doing monitors, but again, you put that kind of thing in front of a volunteer, and my experience is most of them usually step up when they need to. So there's that. Then we have just the one video switcher who's controlling cameras and everything, a lighting person, and then a lyrics pro-presenter operator. Yeah. So.
Right.
And then as far as staff, obviously Steve, worship leading on the stage, and then myself and Dan Taylor, our video editing guy, are kind of the ones making sure the streams are working and everything's going where it needs to go. We kind of have because of our app, we're routing everything through our app first, and then it goes out to church online and YouTube and stuff. So it's a little more complicated than some other churches that are just sending right to YouTube. But
right.
So that would be Dan that's kind of looking after that every Sunday. But,
and you obviously feel like that's important. What do you think is kind of what is it that's pushing you to use that platform as opposed to using YouTube or Facebook or Vimeo or any of those sorts of things?
So we would actually, to be honest with you, I think we'd abandon YouTube altogether. But right now, it's the only thing in the chain that will actually like kind of degrade the video for people with bad internet connections and stuff like that.
Right.
Our app is talking about that function coming, but it's not there yet.
You're talking about the transcoder to be able to adjust to different devices at different speeds, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So if the app could handle that, we'd probably just send people right through the app, and then it'd also be connected to the website, obviously. The only reason we're still using Church Online platform is strictly for the chat feature. So
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So yeah, YouTube, we actually didn't start doing YouTube right off the bat, but we found there was enough people having connection issues. We're capturing everything in 1080p, so it's not great for somebody out in their country house,
right,
with a bad internet connection. So we decided to start putting the embed code on YouTube as well, just as another option for those people. So.
It's interesting, because so many churches are trying to make sure that they're producing a great quality of product, service, right, to everybody. And things like transcoding and things like, what's the easiest way for people to find the link to be able to get to the service? What's the easiest way for them to be able to connect during or after the service? That kind of thing. They're all those things. They line up right along with is our snow shoveled in the parking lot? Do we have accessible washrooms? Can you get into the building with a wheelchair? Like they're accessibility, but they're online accessibility sort of discussions, right?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of us have had to rethink that, not just within churches, but our corporate clients as well are having to kind of rethink the accessibility side, the just the ability for people to be able to connect and use those things. Having to think that through. So that's one area. But what else is something that that you guys have kind of learned over the last couple of months? Maybe something that surprised you. But what do you think has been the biggest learning thing for you guys?
Obviously, it goes without saying, but like the gear and the software side of things has been a huge learning curve. But I think just continuing to make sure that we're connecting with our people. Obviously, when we were kind of in-person services from June to end of December, the chat feature on our stream side of things was it had gone down a bit because a lot of people were now back in the building.
Right.
But then over the last 2 weeks, you can see again, it's just the level of activity on that chat is kind of through the roof. And so I think the biggest thing for us is just making sure, obviously the content initially back in March, content quality wasn't as important as opposed to just getting something to your people. Now the quality is a little more important, but just the connection in any way we can. And so we're streaming youth on Wednesday nights when we're in the building as well, and also sending online content out for our men's and women's. And so just lots of social media blasts to try and make sure people are aware of what's where and how to access it, to your point. I think, just trying to continually connect. And we're learning just as much as everybody else. I wouldn't say we're good at this yet, but the curve is kind of going up for us. So that's kind of what's important at this point in time, and then just make sure it keeps going up. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody's learning. I said this the other day, like nobody's got it perfect, right? Everybody's learning as they go. So it's great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time, Andrew. I really appreciate it. And it sounds like you guys are heading in the right direction. So that's good.
With your help, very much so. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate being able to work with you guys. Thank you very much, sir. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. 4 different churches trying to figure out how to do church through a pandemic. And they're all doing some really interesting things. And I would definitely encourage you to check out what they're doing on their respective websites. I'd really like to thank Al and Adam and Andrew for joining us. Maybe next time we do this, we will find somebody whose name doesn't start with an A. Thanks for watching, and if there's anything that we can help you out with at Horizon Solutions, you can find us at www.horizonsolutions.net. We will see you again. Thanks for watching.